On September 25, 2025, large-scale demonstrations broke out in the capital of Madagascar in East Africa, which continue to this day. These demonstrations were initiated by local young people who claimed to be inspired by the Generation Z movement in Kenya and Nepal. They expressed dissatisfaction with their government's long-term neglect of social injustice, water and electricity supply disruptions, failing infrastructure, and the hardships faced by the people. However, the demonstrations turned into riots. Unexpectedly, some Chinese-owned shopping malls and stores were looted and even burned, with some Chinese owners suffering losses of 7.20 million or 8.43 million. According to the mainland Chinese media Shaoxiang Morning News, Mr. Ding, a Chinese resident in the area, stated that although they did not participate in the march, they supported it because the government's water and power outages had also impacted their business. However, they did not expect the protest to escalate into a riot, which affected shopping malls and stores in the capital, resulting in significant losses for merchants from various countries. A Chinese-owned shopping mall near Mr. Ding's home was completely looted and burned by locals overnight on September 25th, resulting in losses of 7.02 to 8.43 million. Mr. Ding said that many local Chinese chose to return to China. They later contacted the local police and military, paying them to serve as bodyguards. At noon on September 26, a group of rioters attacked them and were repelled by the police. On September 29, the current president Andry Rajoelina publicly apologized to the public on national television on behalf of the government, announcing the dissolution of the government. He stated that the Prime Minister Christian Natse and other officials would remain in office until a new government was formed. He ordered a review of the new Prime Minister's candidates within 3 days. The United Nations stated that protests and clashes in Madagascar have left at least 22 people dead and over 100 injured. President Rajoelina expressed his desire for dialogue with young people and expressed sympathy for the public's anger and difficulties over prolonged power outages and water shortages. He also pledged to help businesses affected by the unrest resume operations. Despite the president's attempts to appease locals and ethnic Chinese, the violent unrest has deeply alarmed Chinese residents, as the plundering of Chinese people in Africa is a common occurrence. On July 28, 2025, a one-third increase in diesel prices sparked a strike by many Angolan minibus drivers. The protests quickly spread to several regions across the country, becoming the worst wave of protests in Angola in recent years. A fire in the city's gates has affected many others. On July 30th, the CCP mouthpiece CCTV reported that riots in Angola resulted in 22 deaths and 197 injuries. Huang Yuequan, chairman of Angola Chinatown, said that several Chinese businesses were looted during the riots, some being emptied within seconds. In early 2025, Mozambique in East Africa was plunged into unrest. Opposition parties protested the results of the previous October's presidential election, joining large numbers of citizens in the streets of Maputo, the capital, leading to a series of violent clashes. Furthermore, a widespread wave of anti-Chinese sentiment swept across Mozambique, resulting in the looting of many Chinese-related shops and facilities. Even more shockingly, some Mozambicans actually drove armored vehicles donated by the CCP into Chinese-owned supermarkets. What do these Chinese business owners think of this caring gesture from their motherland? In response, some Chinese netizens sarcastically commented, "Why don't the experts come out to say anything?" One Twitter user noted that in addition to Chinese-owned shops, even the agricultural demonstration center, built with the assistance from the Chinese government and the Mozambican government, was looted by Mozambicans during the riots. This is a picture of the agricultural demonstration center after it was looted. This is the scene of Mozambicans looting and burning Chinese-owned shops and factories. However, the CCP authorities who habitually pursue a wolf warrior policy against democratic countries like Europe and the US have turned a blind eye to the plight of their own citizens in Mozambique and have not taken any evacuation measures to protect their citizens. It seems that the party mother is not concerned about the precarious situation of its own people in Africa. One tweeter quoted a Chinese influencer's article defending the CCP, claiming that if the CCP rashly evacuated Chinese citizens, the wealth accumulated by many Chinese overseas would be wiped out. Rather than handing over their entrepreneurial achievements, it would be better to allow Chinese citizens to remain in the country to protect their own interests. For such a point, local Chinese clearly disagreed. It's reported that some Chinese business people in Mozambique have prepared defensive weapons such as pistols and Molotov cocktails for self-defense. As early as December 24, 2024, Mozambicans began looting Chinese-owned stores. In response, netizens sarcastically commented, "This is an impulsive action by African brothers. It will be fine in a few days. Africans are taking something from their brothers. You cannot call it robbing. African brothers are Chinese citizens." Some also indirectly criticized the CCP, saying, "This store robbery is not a pity. Opening a supermarket there isn't something ordinary people can do. It's the domain of powerful capitalists." This is a video of the locals robbing Chinese people in Mozambique in late 2024. Some people block the road with bricks and barricades, and some people smash cars. Local Chinese Mr. Leo said his company has been shut down for a month. The blacks stole food, supplies, and some shops. When they saw that the security guards couldn't stop them, other blacks swarmed in. For safety reasons, he would buy large quantities of daily necessities at once and reduce their outings. As local Chinese businesses and factories were looted and burned and their property suffered severe damage, the CCP, which claims the motherland is your strong backing, became limp. The Chinese embassy's response was merely a warning. According to mainland media outlet the Beijing News, the embassy advises Chinese citizens to exercise caution when traveling to Mozambique in the near future. This statement is ineffective. Perhaps only when their lives are in danger will Chinese citizens realize they are nothing to the CCP. One netizen posted a video saying, "Don't come to the Democratic Republic of Congo. Prices in Africa are 7 times higher and they specifically rob Chinese people." He described Kolwezi, a city with a large Chinese population, saying, "Many people say that US dollars here are just like you using RMB in China. Imagine how high prices are there. Even prices in Chinese supermarkets have increased several times." There are a lot of copper and cobalt mining companies here, and there are a lot of Chinese people, around 20 to 30,000 people. 80% of the Chinese in the Democratic Republic of the Congo are located in this area. However, the security risks here are indeed very high. There are frequent robberies, armed attacks, and even terrorist attacks targeting Chinese people. Every year, dozens to over 100 Chinese people die here, so the security situation is truly not good. Someone confirmed, "Most of Africa is expensive. A bowl of noodles costs $10 and vegetables are more expensive than meat." One can imagine how the impoverished locals would feel upon seeing the Chinese being so generous. A Chinese netizen working in Zambia, Africa, posted a video revealing a robbery that occurred on June 8, 2025. He described a robbery at the Daoyang Gas Company in Chambishi Cooperation Zone. Chinese employees Ms. Wang and Mr. Ma were having breakfast in the living area. Upon hearing the alarm, they immediately closed the iron gate. However, 4 armed robbers forced their way in. They picked up bullet casings from the previous attack, took away the main surveillance system with the stolen money of $5,365, and fled in a car. This is the 3rd robbery of a Chinese compatriot in the past 2 weeks, following the incidents on May 28th and 29th. I'd like to remind our fellow Chinese people to be extremely careful and avoid going out after 6 p.m. When you're out, don't expose your belongings to locals. Local Zambians now assume that Chinese people are wealthy.
现在赞比亚的当地老百姓心里默认为就是中国人很有钱。
Ex-platform blogger News Investigation published an article stating that since the Chinese Communist Party authorities began their massive spending spree in Africa, more and more Africans have come to view Chinese people as cash cows. and some police in African countries have openly extorted Chinese people. Someone summarized, African countries seem to have reached a tacit understanding. They take turns looting Chinese businesses. First South Africa, then the Democratic Republic of the Congo, then Angola. Even more despicable in Niger, where they directly loot entire businesses. There are quite a few cases of Chinese businesses being looted in Africa. Take Angola, for example. When riots break out, local poor people rush to Chinatown to loot the Chinese stores. Supermarkets and appliance stores were the hardest hit. The scenes were packed with people, young and old, men and women, even teenagers. Large trucks used by the Chinese owners to block the doors and armed security patrols both proved futile. Hundreds, even thousands of people surged forward, making it impossible to stop the riots. In Mozambique in December 2024, after the court announced the election results, riots broke out. Hundreds of Chinese-owned shops, supermarkets, and factories were looted and burned, even with people in military uniforms participating. The local economy is weak, with a low per capita GDP and 70% of residents living below the poverty line. While the local government would intervene, the losses of Chinese people have already been incurred. Some local Chinese people said, in some African countries, police will arrest you directly if they see you are Chinese, without any reason, and contacting the Chinese embassy is ineffective. The embassy's reasoning was, this is the internal affairs of African countries, we can't interfere. Chinese embassy staff who are supposed to provide assistance and advice for Chinese citizens overseas never show any power of the so-called wolf warriors. Some reminded, don't forget the Chinese government just announced on September 5, 2024 that it would provide an additional $50.56 billion in financial support to African countries. This money isn't just going down the drain, it's providing ample funds for locals to persecute Chinese people. Regarding the experiences of Chinese people in Africa, netizens have expressed concerns. What is the Chinese embassy doing? They're showing off their might in the Taiwan Strait every day with their 00X destroyer and so-called 6th-generation space fighter jets. Others wrote, where are the wolf warriors? Where's Wu Jing? When do they ever take themselves seriously? This country, this party, this government. The Chinese authorities frequently deploy their so-called wolf warrior spirit against democratic countries like Europe and the US, pledging to fight to the bitter end. Yet, when Chinese people face danger in Africa, the CCP remains silent. Even more ironic, on January 18, 2017, the Beijing Youth Daily reported that the film Wolf Warrior 2, directed and starring Chinese actor Wu Jing, had moved to Africa for filming. However, Wu Jing posted on Weibo, the South African advance team was robbed in a slum, but no casualties were reported. Wolf Warrior still has a long way to go. Brothers, hire more bodyguards. Netizens commented, is the real-life Wolf Warrior so afraid of death? Probably that 360 billion yuan hasn't arrived yet. Let's see who'll take it all. Didn't he show his red passport? Wolf Warrior said, it's okay if I don't show it, but if I do, I'll get even more brutally beaten. The living standards of the Chinese people have plummeted, industries have withered, and people are living in dire straits, but this hasn't stopped the CCP's determination and efforts to aid Africa. At the same time, the treatment of African students in China is widely recognized as excellent. Shandong University's policy of assigning several so-called female study partners to each African international student once shocked society. Shandong province boasts high admission scores for universities, and Shandong female students who managed to get in have studied incredibly hard. Yet Shandong University secretly screened attractive girls from modest or impoverished families to serve as study partners for African students. Since then, reports have surfaced of female students becoming pregnant, having miscarriages, and even given birth to mixed-race children. Even more alarming, in the 5 years since the so-called study partner system was implemented, Shandong University's HIV/AIDS rate has increased by a staggering 295.2%. Some point out that even red light districts don't have such high rates. This explains why Shandong University has been unable to recruit local students since lowering the admission score by 40 points. Locals are privy to this insider information, and such events aren't limited to Shandong University.
这样的新闻让人震惊。2007年
The news that a black international student infected hundreds of female university students with HIV is shocking. In 2007, a Zambian international student was hospitalized with HIV. He claimed to have had sex with at least 100 female university students while at the university. Subsequent screening revealed that at least 20 of these women were diagnosed with HIV. Even more shocking is that since 2010, China has eliminated health screenings for Black African international students. These African students studying in China are likely the source of HIV infection.
很可能就是艾滋病的传染源。
In response to this, some Taiwanese netizens pointed out, have Taiwan's ignorant voters seen clearly? This is what it's like to be ruled by the Communist Party. Do they still think it doesn't matter? One netizen quoted a famous quote from Indian Mahatma Gandhi.
会毁灭人类的有7种东西。
Gandhi said that 7 things can destroy humanity: politics without principle, wealth without work, knowledge without character, science without humanity, commerce without morality, pleasure without conscience, religion without sacrifice.
没有牺牲的敬拜。
In response, one netizen bluntly said, the CCP has all 7 things that can destroy humanity. That's all for today. If you enjoy our content, please give us a thumbs up, subscribe, leave a comment, and share it with a friend. We appreciate your support, and we'll see you next time.